Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for our almost last week of Curious Summer Study, but I'll get to that in just a minute. I am Jill Sullivan, and I am joined by...
I'm Reed Epps.
Maddie Koenig.
Tyler Riley.
And Tyler Riley, yep. So tonight is week 7 of our Curious Summer Study, and that means that it's the last week of curriculum for our summer study. So tonight, we are going to be doing kind of a look back on everything that we have talked through so far this summer, but we're going to do it in a unique way, we think. So I'll take us back to the very first week of summer study, and we were talking about an overview of this whole series, and the series name is Follow Me, A Look at Those Who Did. So the very first week that we were here, we were talking about what does it mean when Jesus says to the early followers, but also when he asks us, follow me. What does that mean for us? And we kind of dug into the way that means we may have to leave things behind. It means that it should be an immediate transformation and an immediate pursuing of Jesus and his mission and living that way nonstop. So we kind of readjusted maybe our expectation of what we have come to know as, oh yeah, I'm following Jesus, to what it really means. Then in the coming several weeks, what we did is we took 1 week at a time to study one follower at a time. And what I want to do tonight before you guys go to your discussion is I want us to do just a quick recap up here of some of the people who we studied, maybe some things that stuck out to you about them. So you guys can take it away. Who are you remembering?
So our first week, we looked at Peter, and I just love diving into the character of Peter because it's someone that we hear a lot from some of those big iconic stories, but taking a deeper look at him, something I really appreciated about him is his boldness, but also he's the kind of guy that when he falls down, he gets back up and he tries again and he goes full force. And we see that a lot, especially when he had that moment of despair and he denied Jesus, but then Jesus came and almost restored him by re-giving him that mission to go forward. And then Peter immediately does that and becomes what they call the rock of the church. He starts forming the church. So his big downfalls don't deter him from the mission that Jesus has called him to.
Yeah, which is the same for us.
Yeah.
Our downfalls don't deter us from being on mission for Jesus either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked about Thomas, who is, as we said that week, doesn't get a ton of airtime in Scripture, but he does have a couple of big moments. One is what he's probably most known for, which is the name Doubting Thomas, which what a way to be remembered, where Jesus has conquered death, and then Thomas asks basically for proof, like until I see the scars and I touch the scars in your hand, that's what I need for kind of proof, and that's why he gets that. And then we also see a bold charge as Jesus is saying, no, he's going to go to the family of Lazarus, who was a close friend of his after Lazarus has died, and the disciples are trying to deter him from that because of all of these things, the large crowds and what could become of Jesus, all these valid things. And then Thomas is the one who's like, no, like we're going to follow him. Let's follow him. And so it was a really cool opportunity to look at him for those two kind of contrasting stories for me personally.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we got to talk about Mary Magdalene, and I love diving into her because she is someone that they speculate a lot about, but we do know a couple of things for sure about her, and that Jesus completely transformed her life when he casted all those demons out of her. It says that she had 7 demons, and then we know that she's faithful throughout his ministry and supporting Jesus and being there, and also faithful to the end when she went with him, even when most of the disciples abandoned Jesus to the cross to help bury him. And then she is the one in all 4 Gospels that they say got to experience the resurrected Jesus and bring that good news first. So it was really cool to look at her and just kind of see a different perspective of someone who got to follow Jesus, but wasn't part of the 12 disciples, but still was such an important part of Jesus' ministry and vital to understanding the gospel to what it is today.
And then we got to week 5, y'all. We got to see Paul. And I loved Paul because we got to talk about his conversion one.
Yeah.
And then what I took away from Paul is like our capacity as believers and followers of Christ. Like we have so much more that God can do for us that sometimes we don't think we can do. And then we look at the life of Paul, who writes 13 books of the New Testament and goes on to be a mentor to thousands of people. It's like we have so much we can do here on earth. And so I'm just taking that away from Paul. And to see that transformation is so cool to see that Jesus does. And I can actually go into next week, which is Judas, who we got to go and talk about Judas and talk about how Judas can be seen as a warning sign for us, as a warning that, you know, if we're following the wrong things, things can really go bad really quickly for us. But God is able to keep us on the right path if we're able to follow him. And like we said, put everything down, follow him with everything we have. And like Paul, charge for him wherever we're going. So I love those two. And Paul was a really cool character for me, I think. Really cool.
Yeah. So as we have just recapped in about probably 3 minutes what we've covered in several weeks, I'm sure that you guys are coming away with several probably takeaways of things that you have really gotten to think about more deeply for the first time, or maybe things that you learned for the first time ever. So I'll ask you guys up here, what are just a couple of takeaways that y'all are walking away with from some of these people and studying them this summer?
Yeah, I think I will go with the unpopular because we may not want to say it, but I think honestly studying Judas and like Rita was saying, like as a warning sign, like that's such a good reminder for us. We ultimately want to be a follower of Jesus and doing that wholeheartedly, but there are definitely things even within our individual wiring that these desires that we have that can get in the way. Judas's, love obsession with money to the point of absolute sin, and he continues to sow into that, and then we see the destruction. And so, I mentioned in this week, but it's such a conviction for me whenever we're looking at Judas and we're just like, I would never. No, you do. And because Judas definitely just traded Jesus for something that he loved more. And there's so many times where I could see that I did that. And there's so many warnings for me, even moving forward of like, hey, this is what happens when you do that. So when it becomes a temptation, know to steer from that, because this is what it could lead to.
I think one of the big things I learned was, I think for like Tyler's week, when we talked about Thomas, the concept of doubting, originally when I first started looking at it before we came on stage, I looked at it as like, doubt is like a bad thing, but then I read into it, it's like, doubt is not a bad thing, it's a learning thing for us, and we can learn from it so much with our reaction. As we got to talk about week 3, is like, the way we react to doubt is like, are we going to God and saying like, Lord, show me, and not doing what me and Tyler talked about is like, don't test the Lord, but instead come to him and say, show me, Lord, like I doubt, but I know that you can come through for me. So I thought that was really cool to come away with.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same things for both of them. And going back to Peter again, is that I think I relate to Peter in the fact that sometimes I can be really bold, but then I have those moments of slip up, and I'm tempted to just sit in that defeat and be like, well, I messed up. There's no coming back from this. And just seeing how Jesus reacts to that when Peter does have questions or boldly says things and like Jesus rebukes him, but he's still there and he still loves him. He still picks him back up and sends him on that mission. And so just as someone who worries about mistakes a lot of times, I think looking at Peter just kind of shows me, like putting myself in Peter's shoes, okay, when I make mistakes, or when Peter made mistakes, how did Jesus respond? And in the same way, when I make mistakes, how does Jesus respond to me in that? And I feel like I learned a lot from that week as well.
Great. So tonight, you guys are going to do a recap, kind of like we're doing in your own groups. But here is a unique thing that we're going to ask you to do in your group times. we're going to ask you, as you start to discuss all of these different people who we have studied over the last several weeks, we want you to choose who is the follower that you relate with the most. Or maybe, I don't know, you've just realized, oh, I have that type of thought all the time, or that's the struggle that, pops up inside of me. And you're going to get a chance to link yourself with a follower and kind of identify with one of them and lean into that for a little bit. And you guys will also go back to, there was a chart that we looked at week 1 in our groups that had you kind of evaluate where you stand and how all in are you when it does come to following Jesus. So we'll revisit that chart and see if maybe there's even been some growth in these several weeks this summer. I'm sure there has been. I'm sure that God has really just brought new faith to you this summer. So you guys, we are wrapping up our last week of curriculum, like I said, because next Wednesday night, things are going to look a little bit different on Wednesday night. What's going to happen is every curious group is going to plan their own end of the summer study party, where y'all are going to do Zoom parties. You can do a different theme if you want to. You can do a game or activity or whatever. Everybody's getting creative, which means that we will not have a intro time up here before you go into your parties. So this is our last end cap up here having these conversations. We've really enjoyed it. It's been fun, and I hope that y'all have enjoyed it too. So with that, we won't see you from here next week, but we hope you have great parties. I know that I have been planning for my group, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So y'all sign off now. You can join your Zoom discussions for tonight, and then you'll be on your parties next week. We will see you soon, guys.